The old Honda made a terrible grinding sound before it died completely. Lisa pulled over to the side of the road and tried turning the key again. Nothing. The engine was completely silent now, and the headlights were already getting dim. She sat there for a moment, watching the snow fall harder outside her window. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was just trying to get home from her shift at the hospital. The weather forecast had said light snow, but this looked like a real blizzard was starting. Lisa grabbed her phone to call for help, but there were no bars. No signal at all. She looked around at the quiet street she'd never been on before. Had taken a different route tonight because of construction on her usual road. Big mistake. The wind was getting stronger, rocking her small car back and forth. Through the snow, she could see house lights glowing warm and yellow. People were inside, probably having dinner or watching TV, nice and cozy. She looked at her fuel gauge. Empty. Even if the car started, she wouldn't get far. Her fingers were already getting cold inside the car. The temperature outside was dropping fast, and without the engine running, the heater was useless. She knew she couldn't stay. Here, in weather like this, people died sitting in their cars. Lisa zipped up her thin jacket and stepped outside. The cold hit her like a punch. The wind was so strong it almost knocked her over, and the snow was falling so thick she could barely see 20 feet ahead. Her scrubs from the hospital were not made for this kind of weather. She walked up to the first house, a big 2-story place with a nice front porch. Warm light spilled out from the windows, and she could see shadows moving. Around inside, a family was sitting around their dinner table, laughing about something. Lisa knocked on the front door, her knuckles already turning red from the cold. She heard footsteps inside, and then the porch light came on. A middle-aged man opened the door, but only about 6 inches. He kept the chain lock on. "Hi, I'm so sorry to bother you," Lisa said, her teeth already starting to chatter. "My car broke down right outside, and I have no phone signal. Could I please just use your phone to call for help?" The man looked her up and down with suspicious eyes. "I don't know you," he said. "We don't let strangers in our house." "Please, sir, I'm a nurse at General Hospital. I just need to make one quick call. It's getting really dangerous out here." "Sorry, can't help you," the man said and started closing the door. "Wait," Lisa called out, but the door was already shut. She heard the deadbolt click into place. Lisa stood there for a moment, shocked. She looked back at her car, already half covered in snow, and at the warm house where the family had gone back to their dinner like nothing happened. The snow was falling even harder now. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and walked to the next house. This one was smaller, but still looked comfortable. Holiday decorations hung in the windows, and she could smell something delicious cooking inside. She knocked again, stamping her feet to try to keep them warm. An older woman came to the door this time, opening it just a crack. "Excuse me, ma'am, I'm stranded outside. My car died, and I have no way to call for help. Could I please just step inside for a minute and use your phone?" The woman looked nervous. "Oh dear, I can't. My husband wouldn't like it. We don't know you. I understand you're being careful, but I'm really in trouble here. Look at me. I'm in my work uniform from the hospital. I'm not dangerous. I just need help." "I'm sorry, honey, but we just can't. Try the house next door, maybe." The woman closed the door quickly, and Lisa heard several locks turning. Lisa's hands were going numb now. She stuffed them in her pockets and walked to the next house. Snow was getting deeper, making it hard to walk. Her shoes weren't made for this weather either, and snow was getting inside them, soaking her socks. House after house, the same thing happened. Some people wouldn't even come to the door. She could see them peeking through their curtains, watching her knock, but they pretended not to be home. Others opened the door but had the same response. They didn't know her, so they couldn't help. One house, a teenager answered the door and looked really worried when he saw her shivering. "Mom!" he called back into the house. "There's a lady here who needs help. Get away from that door right now," his mother yelled, rushing over. She grabbed her son by the arm and pulled him back. "We don't open doors to strangers." "What's wrong?" "With you? But Mom, look at her. She's freezing." "That's not our problem. Close the door." The boy looked back at Lisa with sorry eyes as his mother slammed the door shut. Lisa felt tears starting to freeze on her cheeks. Oh. She wasn't crying from sadness exactly, but from the cold and the growing fear that no one was going to help her. Her whole body was shaking now, and her fingers felt like ice. She tried 3 more houses. One man yelled through the door that he'd call the police if she didn't leave his property. Another woman took one look at her through the window and just shook her head, not even bothering to open the door. Lisa stumbled through the snow to another house, but her legs were getting weak. The cold was making her feel dizzy and confused. She knew these were bad signs. The hospitals, she'd treated people with hypothermia before. She knew what happened when your body temperature dropped too low. At the next house, she could barely lift her hand to knock. A man in his 50s answered, and for a moment, Lisa thought she saw kindness in his eyes. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely working. "I'm going to die out here if someone doesn't help me." The man hesitated, looking back into his house, where she could hear a TV playing and children laughing. "Look, I feel bad for you. I really do," he said. "But these days you never know. What if you're on drugs or something? What if this is some kind of trick? I've got kids in here. I can't take that risk." "I'm a nurse," Lisa said weakly, showing him her hospital ID badge. "Please, just let me call someone." "I'm sorry," the man said, and he actually did look sorry. "But I just can't. Try calling 911 from your cell phone." "I told you, there's no signal." But he was already closing the door. Lisa stood on his porch, swaying a little. She had lost count of how many houses she'd tried. Maybe 15? 20? The snow was up to her knees now, and the wind was howling like an angry animal. She looked down the street and saw a few more houses, but they seemed so far away. She forced herself to keep walking. Each step was harder than the last. Cold was making her think strange thoughts, and she kept wanting to just lie down in the snow and rest, but she knew that would be the end of her. One more house, she told herself. Just one more house. Maybe the next person would be different. Maybe the next person would remember what it meant to be human. Lisa's legs felt like they were made of lead as she trudged through the snow to the next house. Every step took more effort than it should. The snow was almost up to her knees now, and her jeans were soaked through. She couldn't feel her toes anymore, which scared her more than anything else. She had to stop and lean against a mailbox to catch her breath. The wind was so loud she could barely think straight. When she looked back, she could see her footprints in the snow, but they were already filling up fast. It was like the storm was trying to erase any proof that she had ever been there. The next house had a big SUV in the driveway, and Christmas lights still hanging from last month. Lisa could see a woman in the kitchen window cleaning dishes while talking on the phone. She looked so normal, so safe and warm. Lisa knocked on the door, but her hands were so numb she could barely make any sound. She tried knocking harder, using her whole fist. Finally, the woman came to the door. "What do you want?" the woman asked through the door, not even opening it. "My car broke down," Lisa called out, her voice getting weaker. "I need help, please." "A call. A tow truck?" "I can't. My phone has no signal." "It's not my problem," the woman yelled back. "Go away, or I'm calling the police." Lisa pressed her forehead against the cold door. "Please, I'm begging you. I'm going to freeze to death out here. Don't threaten me," I said. "Go away." Lisa heard the woman's footsteps walking away from the door. She stood there for a long moment, trying to understand how someone could just walk away from another person in trouble. Her whole body was shaking now, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Fear was creeping into her chest, making it hard to breathe normally. She had treated frostbite victims at the hospital. She knew what happened when people stayed out in weather like this too long. She forced herself to keep moving. The next house was dark, except for one light in an upstairs window. She knocked and waited, but nobody came. She knocked again, louder this time, and saw the upstairs light go out. Someone was definitely home, but they were hiding from her. "Hello?" she called out. "I can see you up there. Please, I just need to use a phone." Nothing. The house stayed, dark and quiet. Lisa felt anger rising up inside her chest, mixing with the fear. These people could see her through their windows. They could see that she was in trouble, that she was just a normal person who needed help. but they were choosing to ignore her. At the next house, she could hear music playing inside, and people laughing. It sounded like they were having a party. She knocked on the door, and the music stopped. She could hear people whispering inside. A man's voice called out, "We're not buying anything." "I'm not selling anything, Lisa," shouted back. "I need help. My car broke down." More whispering. Then a woman's voice. "We don't know who that is, Dave. Don't open it. I'm a nurse," Lisa yelled, pulling out her hospital badge and holding it. Up to the window. "Look, here's my ID. I work at General Hospital." She heard someone walking to the window, and the curtain moved slightly. For a moment, she thought maybe they would help her. But then the curtain closed again, and the music started playing louder than before. Lisa sank down onto their front steps, putting her head in her hands. Her hair was full of snow and ice now, and her face felt like it was burning from the cold wind. She tried to think clearly, but her thoughts were getting fuzzy. She knew she was in real trouble now. Her body was starting to shut down, to protect her vital organs. Soon, she wouldn't be able to think straight at all. She had maybe an hour before she couldn't walk anymore. She pulled herself back up and stumbled to the next house. This one looked different from the others. It was smaller and older, with paint peeling off the shutters. But there were lights on in several windows, and she could smell something cooking. An elderly man answered the door this time. He was wearing a thick sweater and looked like somebody's grandfather. "Oh my," he said when he saw her. "You look terrible, dear," Lisa felt. Hope flooding through her chest. Finally, someone who seemed to care. "Sir, please, I need help. My car died, and I have no way to call anyone. Could I please just come inside for a minute to warm up and use your phone?" The old man looked at her with kind eyes, and for a moment, she thought her nightmare was over. "I wish I could help you, sweetheart, I really do," he said slowly. "But my daughter told me never to let strangers in the house. She says it's not safe anymore, not like when I was young." "Me? Do I look dangerous? I'm half frozen to death. I know. It breaks my heart. But my daughter checks on me every day, and if she found out I let someone in, ... double quotes, he shook his head sadly, she'd put me in one of those homes. I can't risk it." Lisa felt like she was falling into a deep hole. Even the people who wanted to help her were too scared. "Could you at least call someone for me?" she asked desperately. "I don't have a phone, dear." "My daughter handles all that stuff on her computer thing." The old man looked like he might cry. "I'm so sorry. I really am." Closed the door gently, and Lisa heard him walking away slowly. Lisa stood there in the snow, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. She looked up at the sky, where the snow was still falling hard. The streetlights made everything look like a dream, but it was the worst kind of dream. She counted the houses in her head. She had tried over 20 now. It's 20 families who had looked at another human being in trouble and decided to protect themselves instead. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and for a second, her heart jumped. But when she pulled it out, it was just the low battery warning. Soon, even that would be dead. Lisa looked down the street. There were only a few more houses left before the road ended. After that, there was nothing but empty fields and woods. She took a deep breath of the freezing air and started walking again. Each step was harder than the last, but she kept going. She had to, because the alternative was giving up. She wasn't ready to do that yet. But deep down, a small voice in her head was starting to whisper that maybe nobody was going to help her. Maybe this was just how the world worked now. Maybe she was going to die on this street, and tomorrow morning, these same people would step over her body on their way to work. She shook her head hard, trying to clear those thoughts away. There had to be someone. There just had to be. Lisa stumbled and fell face first into a snowdrift. For a moment, she just lay there. The snow felt almost warm against her face, which she knew was a very bad sign. Her body was so cold that snow felt comfortable. She had seen patients like this before, people who were found sitting peacefully in the snow, smiling, because their brains had stopped working properly. She forced herself to get up, spitting out snow and ice. Her legs shook as she stood, and she had to grab onto a fence post to keep from falling again. When she looked around, She realized she was at the very end of the street. There were only 3 houses left. The first house was completely dark, no lights anywhere. Either nobody was home, or they had turned off every light to avoid her. She knocked anyway, but her knuckles barely made any sound against the door. She tried using her elbow, then her shoulder, making as much noise as she could. Nothing. The house stayed silent and dark. Lisa looked at the second house. It was bigger than the others, with a fancy car in the driveway and perfect landscaping under all the snow. Security cameras pointed at every angle. Small sign by the door warned. About an alarm system, she walked up to the front door and knocked. Almost immediately, a voice came through an intercom speaker. "This property is under surveillance. State your business." Lisa looked up at the camera above the door. "Please, I need help. My car broke down and I'm freezing. Could I please just come inside for a few minutes? We don't allow solicitors on this property. I'm not selling anything. I'm stranded. Look at me through your camera. I'm covered in snow. Ma'am, you need to leave immediately or we'll call security. I am the emergency. Please, just let me use your phone." But the intercom had already clicked off. Lisa pounded on the door with both fists, using the last of her strength. "Please," she screamed. "I'm going to die out here. How can you just watch me die?" The porch light suddenly went out, leaving her in darkness. Even with all their technology and security cameras, these people would rather watch her freeze than open their door. Lisa fell to her knees in the snow. Her whole body was shaking so hard she could barely control it. She looked down the street at all the houses she had tried. Warm lights glowed in every window. Families were inside, safe and comfortable, probably getting ready for bed. She tried to stand up, but her legs wouldn't work properly anymore. Everything felt dreamlike and slow. She knew she was running out of time. Her body was shutting down to keep her heart and brain working. The last house at the end of the street looked different from all the others. It was small and old, with a crooked mailbox and a front porch that tilted slightly to one side. The paint was peeling, and one of the shutters hung at an odd angle. An old truck sat in the driveway with rust spots and a dented bumper, but there were lights on inside. Warm yellow lights that looked welcoming somehow. Lisa crawled through the snow toward the house. She couldn't walk anymore, but she wasn't going to give up, not when this was her last chance. The porch steps looked like a mountain, but she pulled herself up one at a time. When she finally reached the front door, she could barely lift her arm to knock. Her hand felt like it weighed 100 pounds. She managed to tap weakly on the door, then collapsed against it. Inside, she could hear a television playing and people talking in another language. Spanish, maybe. She tried to knock again, but she was too weak. Then she heard footsteps coming toward the door. Quick, light footsteps, not hesitant like all the others had been. The door opened. Psst, and warm air rushed out over Lisa's face. A woman stood there, maybe 40 years old, wearing an old sweater and house slippers. She had kind eyes and worry lines around them. The woman took one look at Lisa and gasped, "Oh my God, Miguel. Miguel, come quickly." The woman didn't hesitate. For even a second, she bent down and put her arms around Lisa, trying to help her up. "Come inside, honey. Come inside right now. You're freezing." Lisa felt herself being lifted and pulled into the warm house. She wanted to say thank you, but her mouth wouldn't work properly. All she could do was cry as the warm air hit her frozen. "Skin, Miguel," the woman called again. "Bring blankets. We need hot coffee. We need hot coffee right now." A man came running from another room, followed by 3 children of different ages. None of them asked questions. They all just started helping the man Miguel, wrapped a thick blanket around Lisa's shoulders while his wife guided her to a chair near a small space heater. The children scattered to help. One brought more blankets. Another ran to get hot coffee, and the youngest, a little girl, brought her own stuffed animal and tucked it into Lisa's arms. There," the woman said, rubbing Lisa's hands between her own. "You're safe now. Everything's going to be okay." Lisa looked around the small living room through her tears. The furniture was old and mismatched. The TV had a crack in the screen. Clothes were hanging on a drying rack near the heater. This family clearly didn't have much money, but they had opened their door without asking a single question. They had pulled a stranger inside and immediately started taking care of her. They had done what 20 other families with bigger houses and more money had refused to do. The woman pressed a warm mug into Lisa's hands. "Drink this slowly," she said. "We'll help warm you up from the inside." Lisa took a small sip of the coffee. It was the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted. Not because it was fancy coffee, but because it came with kindness. "Thank you," Lisa whispered, her voice barely working. I thought I was going to die out there." The woman sat down next to her and put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "What's your name, honey?" "Lisa. I'm a nurse at the hospital. My car broke down and nobody would help me." The woman shook her head sadly. "I'm Rosa. This is my husband Miguel and our children, and you don't need to explain anything right now. You just need to get warm." Lisa looked at this family, who had saved her life, and she couldn't understand it. They lived in the smallest, oldest house on the street. They were probably struggling to pay their bills. But they were the only ones who had acted like human beings. "Why?" Lisa asked. "Why did you help me when nobody else would?" Rosa smiled and squeezed her hand. "Because that's what people do for each other. That's what makes us human." The storm was still raging. But inside this little house, Lisa felt safer than she had ever felt in her life. As the warmth slowly returned to Lisa's body, she began to notice more details about the house that had saved her life. The coffee table was made from an old wooden crate, and the couch had patches sewn over worn spots. The walls were decorated with children's drawings and school certificates, held up with tape instead of fancy frames. But everything was clean and organized. There were fresh flowers in a mason jar on the windowsill, and the smell of homemade soup filled the air. This was clearly a home where people cared about each other, even if they didn't have much money. Rosa sat beside her, still rubbing Lisa's hands to help the circulation return. "How are you feeling now?" Rosa asked with genuine concern in her voice. "Better," Lisa said, though her voice was still shaky. "Much better. Thank you so much. I can't believe you just helped me like that. No questions asked." Rosa smiled. "Questions can wait. People can't." Miguel came over with another blanket. "The roads are completely blocked," he said. "Nobody's getting anywhere tonight. You'll stay here until morning." Lisa started to protest. "Oh no, I couldn't. You've already done too much. I don't want to be a burden." "A burden?" Rosa laughed. "Honey, you're not a burden. You're a person who needs help. That's all that matters." The youngest child, a girl who looked about 7 years old, climbed up on the couch next to Lisa. "Are you feeling better now?" she asked in a small voice. "Yes, sweetheart, much better. Thank you for sharing your teddy bear with me." The little girl beamed. "His name is Oso. He helps me when I'm scared." Lisa felt tears welling up in her eyes again, but this time they weren't from the cold. "He helped me too." The middle child, a boy around 12, brought Lisa a bowl of soup. "Mom made this earlier," he said shyly. "It's really good." Lisa took a sip of the warm soup and closed her eyes. It was simple, just vegetables and broth, but it tasted like love. "This is delicious. Thank you." The oldest child, a teenage girl, was folding laundry nearby. She looked up at Lisa with curious eyes. "Were you really out there for a long time? In the storm?" Lisa nodded. "I tried so many houses. Nobody would help me." I was starting to think. She didn't finish the sentence, but Rosa understood. "How many houses?" Rosa asked quietly. "Don't know exactly. Maybe 25, 30. Some people wouldn't even come to the door." Miguel shook his head sadly. "That's not right. That's not how people should treat each other." "But why?" Lisa asked. "I mean, I understand being careful, but I was clearly in trouble. Anyone could see that." Rosa and Miguel exchanged a look. Rosa sighed and sat back in her chair. "People are scared these days," she said. "They watch the news and see all the bad things that happen, and they think everyone is dangerous. Forget that most people are just people, you know. But you weren't scared," Lisa pointed out. "Of course I was scared," Rosa admitted. "When I opened that door and saw you there covered in snow, barely able to stand, I was terrified. But not of you. I was scared for you." Miguel nodded. We know what it's like to need help and have people turn away. When we first came to this country, we had nothing. No money, no place to stay, no one to call. People looked at us like we were criminals, Rosa continued. Just because we spoke different language, just because we looked different. We slept in our car for 2 weeks before someone finally helped us. Lisa listened, understanding beginning to dawn on her. It was an old lady who ran a small grocery store, Miguel said. She barely spoke our language, and we barely spoke hers. Yeah. But she saw that we needed help. She let us sleep in the back room of her store and gave us food. She saved our lives, Rosa said simply. And she taught us something important. She taught us that kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything. The teenage daughter looked up from her laundry. That's why we always help people, right, Mom? Because someone helped us. That's part of it, Rosa said. But it's more than that. It's because we remember how it felt to be desperate. We remember how it felt when people looked at us like we were nothing. Lisa looked around at this family, really looked at them. She noticed things she had missed before. Miguel's clothes were clean but old, with careful patches sewn on the elbows. Rosa's shoes by the door were worn thin at the heels. The children's backpacks were hand-me-downs, covered with decorations they had made themselves. You don't have much, do you? Lisa said gently. Rosa laughed. What's much? We have a roof over our heads. We have food on the table. We have each other. To us, that's everything. But those other houses, Lisa said, still trying to understand. They had so much more. Big houses, nice cars, expensive decorations. Why couldn't they spare even a phone call? Miguel thought for a moment before answering. Maybe when you have a lot, you think you have a lot to lose. Maybe it makes you more afraid. Or maybe, Rosa added, when life is easy for you, you forget what it's like when life is hard. The little girl who had been listening quietly suddenly spoke up. Mama, remember when Mrs. Johnson from down the street needed help with her groceries? And you said we should always help because that's what good people do. Rosa smiled and ruffled her daughter's hair. That's right, Mia. That's exactly right. Lisa felt something changing inside her chest, a warm feeling that had nothing to do with the coffee or the heater. She was seeing something she had never really seen before. Real generosity. Not the kind that came from having extra money to give away, but the kind that came from having very little and choosing to share it anyway. I work at the hospital, Lisa said slowly. I help people every day. But I've never thought about helping strangers outside of work. Not like this. Maybe you never needed to before, Rosa said kindly. Maybe you never met someone who was desperate, but I bet you will now, Miguel added. Once you see how much difference it makes, how much it means to someone, you'll see opportunities everywhere. Lisa thought about all the homeless people she passed on her way to work. All the people she had ignored because she was busy or tired or just didn't want to get involved. She thought about how many times she had walked past someone who might have been as desperate as she had been tonight. You're right, she said quietly. I will see them now. Never be able to not see them. Rosa reached over and squeezed her hand. It's not a burden, honey. It's a gift. It's the gift of caring about other people. Outside, the wind was still howling, but inside this small house, Lisa felt like she was learning something important about what it really meant to be human. Lisa woke up on Rosa's couch to the sound of children getting ready for school. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, and the storm had finally stopped. She could hear Rosa in the kitchen, making breakfast and packing lunches. For a moment, Lisa just lay there, remembering everything that had happened. It felt almost like a dream, but the borrowed pajamas she was wearing and the smell of Rosa's coffee reminded her it was all real. Good morning, sleepyhead, Rosa said, coming into the living room with a steaming mug. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months, Lisa said, sitting up. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done. Don't even think about it. Rosa waved her hand. Miguel already called the tow truck. They'll get your car fixed today. Lisa looked out the window at the street where she had nearly died the night before. In the daylight, it looked so normal and peaceful. The big houses with their closed doors looked the same as always. She wondered if any of those families even remembered the woman who had knocked on their doors in the storm. Rosa, Lisa said. Carefully, can I ask you something? Of course. It's last night when you opened that door. Weren't you even a little bit worried? About letting a stranger into your house with your children here? Rosa sat down beside her and thought for a moment. You want the honest truth? Lisa nodded. For about 2 seconds, yes. There was a tiny voice in my head that sounded like my mother, telling me to be careful. But then I looked at you, really looked at you, and I saw myself. What do you mean? Saw myself 15 years ago standing outside someone else's door, desperate and scared and cold. And I remembered how it felt. When that door stayed closed, Rosa's oldest daughter came running downstairs, backpack in hand. Mom, I'm going to be late. Hold on, Mia. Say goodbye to Lisa first. The girl stopped and smiled at Lisa. Glad you're okay. Mom was worried about you all night. After the children left for school, Rosa and Lisa sat in the quiet kitchen, drinking coffee and talking. Miguel had already left for work, but not before making sure Lisa had his phone number in case she needed anything. What do you do for work? Lisa asked. I clean offices downtown, Rosa said. 3 different buildings, 6 days a week. Miguel drives a delivery truck during the day and does computer work at night. Lisa did the math in her head. That was a lot of hours for not very much money. That must be exhausting sometimes, Rosa admitted. But we're working towards something better. Miguel is taking online classes to learn more about computers. I'm saving up to take English classes at the community college. Your English seems perfect to me, Rosa laughed. You should hear me try to help the kids with their homework. They know more English words than I do now. The tow truck arrived around noon. Lisa's car had been completely buried in snow, but the driver managed to dig it out and get it loaded onto his truck. Looks like your alternator died, he told Lisa. Should be fixed by this evening. As Lisa was getting ready to leave with the tow truck driver, she pulled Rosa aside. I want to pay you for everything you did, she said, reaching for her purse. Rosa shook her head firmly. Absolutely not. Please, Rosa, you fed me, gave me a place to sleep, took care of me. Let me at least pay for the food. Lisa, listen to me. If you give me money, then what I did becomes a business transaction. But what happened last night wasn't business. It was people helping people. Don't turn it into something else. Lisa felt tears starting again. She seemed to cry a lot around this family. But I have to do something. I can't just walk away after everything you've done. Rosa smiled. You want to do something? Then do for someone else what we did for you. That's how kindness works. Doesn't go backward, it goes forward. 3 months later, Lisa was working a late shift at the hospital when a homeless man was brought into the emergency room. He was dirty and smelled bad, and most of the staff tried to avoid dealing with him. But Lisa saw something in his eyes that reminded her of her own fear that night in the storm. She sat with him while they waited for test results. She brought him hot coffee and a warm blanket. She listened while he told her about losing his job, and then his apartment. She didn't judge him or lecture him. She just treated him like a human being who deserved kindness. When her shift ended, instead of going home, Lisa drove the man to a shelter across town. She even gave him money for meals until he could get help from social services. Why are you doing this? He asked her as they sat in her car outside the shelter. Lisa thought about Rosa's words. Because someone did it for me once. And because you deserve help just like anyone else. That was the beginning of everything changing for Lisa. She started volunteering at the homeless shelter on her days off. She began carrying granola bars and water bottles in her car to give to people she saw on street corners. She donated clothes and helped serve meals at the community center. But more than that, she started seeing people differently. She noticed when someone looked lost or scared or hungry. She paid attention to the people others ignored. One day, she was getting coffee before work when she saw an elderly woman crying outside the shop. The woman's purse had been stolen, and she had no way to get home. Lisa didn't hesitate. She bought the woman coffee, called her a taxi, and gave her money for the ride. As they waited for the taxi, the woman kept thanking her over and over. You don't understand, the woman said. I've been standing here for an hour. So many people walked right past me. I thought no one cared anymore. Someone cares, Lisa said simply. There are good people everywhere. Sometimes it just takes a while to find them. 6 months after the storm, Lisa decided to drive back to Rosa's neighborhood. She had been thinking about the family every day, wondering how they were doing. She had tried to call a few times, but Rosa's phone had been disconnected. When she pulled up to the little house at the end of the street, she saw a for sale sign in the front yard. Her heart sank. Had something happened to them? She knocked on the door and Rosa answered with a huge smile. Lisa, what a wonderful surprise. They hugged like old friends, and Rosa invited her in. The house looked the same, but there were boxes stacked in the corners. Are you moving? Lisa asked. Rosa's face lit up with excitement. Yes. Miguel finished his computer classes and got a much better job. And I've been taking those English classes I told you about. We saved enough money to buy a house in a better neighborhood, closer to the kids' school. Lisa felt so happy she could barely contain it. Rosa, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. You know what the best part is? Rosa said. The new house has an extra bedroom for guests. For people who might need help. Lisa laughed and started crying at the same time. Of course they would use their good fortune to help others. That was just who they were. As Lisa was leaving, Rosa walked her to the car. Thank you, Lisa said. For what? For saving my life. Not just that night, but for showing me how to really live. Rosa hugged her one more time. You were always a good person, Lisa. You just needed to remember what that looked like. As Lisa drove away, she thought about that night in the storm. It had been the worst and best thing that had ever happened. To her, she had almost died. But she had also been reborn into someone who understood what really mattered. She thought about all the people she had helped since then, and all the people who had been helped because of her actions. Rosa was right. Kindness didn't go backward. It kept moving forward, touching more and more lives, like ripples spreading across a pond. Lisa smiled as she drove through the city, looking at all the people on the sidewalks. She saw them now, really saw them. Whenever she saw someone who needed help, she knew exactly what to do. She had learned it from the kindest family she had ever met. In the smallest house on a street full of closed doors,